What do the simple folk do to help them escape when they're blue? The shepherd who is ailing, the milkmaid who is glum, the cobbler who is wailing from nailing his thumb. When they're beset and besieged, the folk not noblessly obliged. However do they manage to shed their weary lot? Oh, what do simple folk do? We do not.
Thank you so much. I think this is Philippa Sue doing the Lincoln Center version anyway. We are going to sort of ask ourselves that question about Westeros in the first segment of today's show. A little bit later in the show, we'll be talking about Hamnet, which I suppose has a little bit of that same question in there as well. But welcome to The Nose, and welcome to our panel, Rebecca Castellani, co-founder of Quiet Corner Communications, and the director of marketing at Washington Montessori School, Taneisha Duggan, director of arts, culture, and entertainment for the city of Hartford, Tracy Wu Fastenberg, associate vice president for development of Connecticut Children's. And here we go with the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This tells a very different story. It's a story that I believe takes place in between the events of Game of Thrones and then House of Dragons. But it is about a different sort of person or a different set of people. One of them is a knight known as Sir Duncan. He has only recently become a knight by reason of the death of his master. He's better known as Dunk the Tall. And a little basketball reference there, maybe. And then we have Egg. Egg is his squire. Egg, so known because of his hairlessness. He is played by an 11-year-old boy. I don't know if we were ever told Egg's actual age, but presents more or less in that ballpark. And let's hear, before we get the panel going here, let's hear a little something from Season 1, Episode 1 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. You will hear the aforementioned Egg, played by Dexter Saul Ansell, and Peter Claffey as Sir Duncan, Dunk the Tall.
Do you think I'll ever make a knight one day?
Sure, why not? You're a likely lad.
I'm a bit puny.
You'll grow.
Even for my age. Everyone's always told me so.
Everyone's always told me I was stupid.
And? What?
What?
What did you do when people said you were stupid, sir?
What business is that of yours? My problems are my own.
I thought... Aren't you trying to help me?
Help you what? Grow?
So some of the joy, I think, of this series is watching the two of them work out their relationship at very basic levels at times. But Rebecca Castellani, let's get going on this. I think this series may come as a relief to people in two different ways, one of which I think you are the perfect person to explain. The other one, let me just say, and maybe you can fold it into your answer, is I'm not sure... I mean, we're, as a population these days, we are on our last raw nerve. I'm not really sure we could handle the kind of angst and bloodshed. We can't go through another red wedding right now. We just don't really have it in us. So that's one way in which the series is a relief. But I think also just in terms of the qualities it represents, you found it. Well, maybe you should say a little something about your Game of Thrones PTSD.
Oh, I have well documented on this show Game of Thrones trauma. I have been heartbroken in ways I'm actually not quite ready to articulate by the ending of Game of Thrones. And frankly, by the second season of House of the Dragon, I gave it my all. I was kind of into it, and it just went the same way as Game of Thrones. I said no more. I'm not going to watch this. And then A Night of the Seven Kingdoms came around, and I'm fond of the novella. And I said, oh, are you going to do this to me again? If I had another red wedding happen to me, that would be curtains for me. It would break me beyond repair. That would be it. Thank goodness they read the room and they recognized that the people need some relief. And Night of the Seven Kingdoms is delivering that on all cylinders. It is light. It is funny. It is not, there's still Game of Thrones, let's be real. There's still violence. It's rather shocking. There's still dicey, seedy characters. But on the whole, it is really kind of a buddy comedy. It's just delightful. I think it is a very, very strong cast, and not just the two we heard from, who are absolutely fabulous. I cannot say enough about how funny and charming Dexter Saul Ansell is. Peter Claffey is so easy to root for. He's a tall drink of water. But I do really feel that the secondary cast is so strong, so compelling. Even, the small folk that we don't typically spend that much time with in the Westeros universe are really getting their moments. It's heartwarming, just so far so good. But I will say, I am prepared to have my heart broken again. This is, what Game of Thrones does to me. I'm hoping I'm proven wrong, but I am worried because I'm really enjoying it so far.
And we've if we've those who have been all the way through the available episodes, we are sitting kind of at the edge of a cliff right here.
Yes,
something is about to happen, and we can guess what, but we don't really know. And Taneisha, maybe this is just me, and I didn't stay with House of the Dragon very long at all. I tried to watch it twice, and I just didn't like it. I loved Game of Thrones. I actually found that my Westeros antennae were kind of out of shape, as all these various, Targaryens and Lannisters and Baratheons are showing up. And I was thinking, then, is that guy Draco Malfoy? No, he's from a different set of books, I'm pretty sure. I'd sort of gotten, I don't know, I kind of lost the knack for keeping track because some of the big families are showing up now in the series, and I have to kind of remember who they are. How about you? How's your re-entry going?
My reentry is probably the same as yours, but I've sort of given up on trying to trace the histories because the world is so sprawling at this point. So I am with Rebecca that I'm sort of on the buddy comedy of it all. And yet, you can always count on me to be a little bit of a wet blanket. And I sort of feel like while we may be itching for rom-coms, we do need the practice of how to activate and actionize within this moment. And so I do feel like I'm excited for episode 5 and what comes of that, because I think life is a balance of absurdity and satire and fun and love. But you also got to contend with the red wedding of it all. And so I feel like this might be the perfect blend of all of those things. And they did an excellent job of walking us in without traumatizing us further, which is always delightful.
Yeah, in a way, what you're saying right now is, kind of a microcosm for the macrocosm of what we're all experiencing. I just know on this show, I got through writing the intro to our Saturday newsletter, which is all about how do we decide what to do topic-wise, even on the show. I mean, there's an argument for being kind of dire, if not a dire wolf, dire all the time. And, there's also an argument for people need a little of both. People ultimately need joy and levity and stuff like that. So yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where this series lands in that regard. So Tracy Wu Fastenberg, how are you feeling about it right now?
I mean, I loved the novella. So, I read all of the short stories that went along with it. House of the Dragon, I mean, they dragged that sucker out and they killed me with it. So this one, I'm interested to see how they pace this. But so far, I am loving it. I mean, Egg is he's so endearing. And he's such a true little boy, too, at heart. But you can also see, if you know your Westeros history, where it's going and what will happen there. And again, this is Westeros. So, they are, the buddy comedy is amazing, but, we're all ready for what Red Wedding could come along at any point. I love the dynamics. I love the acting. I love the fact that you can actually follow the storyline too. Because, I love Game of Thrones, but at some points, you needed your mystery board with all the strings going along. And seeing everything from the small folk perspective is fantastic. But really, the acting is great. That little guy, Egg, is just so perfect. The way he plays him with his bit of wisdom, but his big heart. But you can see that little kid, tiny bit of I want this, I want it now, I'm not eating that. All of those little bits and pieces just come through so perfectly, and you can relate it to real life. I think it's that little breath of fresh air we need right now. And it's really enjoyable to watch. And all of the characters, I agree, the secondary characters, just that energy given off by each one. You're just I could hang with you. I hate you. And you, I don't trust you. All of them, you can just feel it and you can really get into it. This is not one of those things where you're sitting there, I'm going to only half pay attention to it. It actually draws you in.
Yeah, a bunch of you, Rebecca, I think both you and Taneisha mentioned buddy movies and road buddy movies, and this is about a knight errant. He doesn't really have any fixed address or any real promising permanent job, so they're wandering around in search of adventure and in search of glory. And I had sort of two thoughts. First of all, like you guys, I was thinking about buddy movies and Hope and Crosby, but also like Midnight Run and A Real Pain. There's a little of all of that in this movie. But I was also thinking, Rebecca, about Arya and the Hound. Arya is kind of a kid, and she's riding around with this big, huge guy. The difference is he might kill her, or she might kill him, or they might both have to kill a lot of people, or they both, and you're sort of just living constantly with that specter of just some kind of horrible massacre that's about to take place. And there is some relief here of just the thinking, mostly they're just arguing out the little points of being on the road together, and, when are we going to eat? When are we going to poop? And all that kind of stuff.
Literally.
There's a lot of bodily fluids happening here too, or a lot of like bodily functions, and that is amusing as anything. And that's how you know that this is not your regular Westeros movie or Westeros show.
I mean, I totally agree with Taneisha that we need the balance, but I think the lowering of the stakes significantly is making it much easier to jump in and feel entertained and not overwhelmed. I think this is very accessible Westeros. Like, if you haven't watched Game of Thrones, I think you could easily watch this and you have no frame of reference for the Targaryens or anyone. You don't know what a Baratheon is versus a Dondarrion. Doesn't matter. It's really such a character-driven piece. And I think what it's doing very well, to Tracy's point, is that Game of Thrones at its peak, you were on any average episode going to like 5 different areas. You were with 10 different characters. It was thrilling, but it was also exhausting and confusing and difficult for the average person just to pick up mid-season. They've really slowed it down. They're much shorter episodes, and there's a lot of breathing room, which I think is something that Game of Thrones struggled with. It wouldn't give you a tender moment on the road between Arya and the Hound exchanging sort of barbs. It was always maybe like a second of that, and then there was bandits attacking them or something, or it just was relentless. And I think this has slowed down and made for a much less fractured, much less frustrating viewing experience. It's kind of quiet, again, very tender. They have sort of extended periods where no one is talking and you're just sort of sitting with them. There's a meditative quality to it sometimes. It's sort of unfamiliar for me and my Westerosi trauma. So I think it's learned a lot from the failures of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And I think it's really not trying to be either one of those things, but lean into the fact that it is such a different tone. The novella is a very different tone than the books proper. It's very, very true to the novella. I mean, pulling dialogue directly out of the novella, not missing cutting scenes, not changing inherent motivations of characters, which is where House of the Dragon went so wrong. So I think that Ira Parker, the showrunner, has learned from the mistakes of his predecessors, and I just hope he can keep that up.
Yeah, and Taneisha,
and I think in slowing it down.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I also think in slowing it down, it gives us a chance to see this mentor-mentee relationship, which I think is so important in this moment. Is that like there's so much pressure on the way in which we understand advisors and advisees. And there's something fluid about the way that these two work with each other.
Totally.
That anyone could be in a hierarchy position at any moment. And I do think the pacing of the show allows for that, right? That like anyone can be an idiot. Doesn't matter how old you are, but anyone can hold wisdom. Doesn't matter how old you are, and that can fluctuate back and forth, which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, we have a family saying. We're saying something. We have a family saying that everyone is an idiot savant, and the trick of life is to figure out what they're an idiot about and what they're a savant about. And I think that's kind of very much there in this story too. That people have their strengths and weaknesses in the way that you're suggesting, Taneisha. The other thing that this thing doesn't have, Tracy Wu Fastenberg, which I think is good. I mean, and it may wind up having these things, and I'm going to use a slightly coarse word because I'm going to be quoting Ian McShane. But Ian McShane, he had a brief little stint in Game of Thrones, and then afterwards he apparently was accused of having given away plot points in interviews, and his response was, he said, giving the plot away. He said, it's only tits and dragons. And there's, Tracy, I think there's also a little bit, I mean, obviously some bad skullduggery is on the way. We can see that. But there is something a little relaxing about that, too. There's no real dragons. People don't have to get naked all the time. I'm right now watching Emilia Clarke in Ponies, and it's kind of a relief that she's fully clothed most of the time. And I don't know, there's a little bit of an innocence in that way returning, too.
Oh, yeah. It feels like that there's actually not a reliance on this sort of, I don't want to say props, right? But in a way that's what you knew you could rely on in either one of its predecessors, where, you knew you were going to see X, you knew you were going to see Y, you knew you were going to see a butt at some point, you knew you were going to see some boobs at some point, and some fire and some special effects. It's not relying on that. It actually gives some space for facial expressions, right? Like as much as conveyed, of all things, as much as is conveyed through those facial expressions, through those moments of the characters, as much through the dialogue or through the scenery or through action. And it actually leaves space for that. So you can actually see things developing and happening and character development, as opposed to just visual, I don't know, explosions. You had a lot of buildings setting on fire in Game of Thrones. You had dragons flying through the sky. And yes, it was exciting to see, but it wasn't necessarily moving things forward for individual characters like you see here, which is sort of lovely, even when the characters are not quite as lovely as you would like them to be, and something is afoot, but you can see that happening in a slower, more nuanced way than you did when there was more, maybe a bigger budget is maybe the nicest way to say it.
Well, there's that too, yeah. We should say also HBO's already ordered up a second season called, based on the Sworn Sword novella. Was that, Taneisha, were you just about to say something?
It was me. It was me. I was going to say, I love that you brought that up, Tracy, because one of the things, sort of my late burning thought about this is that now that the format has shifted from an hour-long, masterpiece to these more sort of 30-minute, comedy serial framework, I am curious about what that means for that sort of 30-minute TV show. And I love that you've sort of offered that, like, perhaps this team isn't doing us a dirty one by, delivering, yes, a smaller budget than their 1 hour, but still a much larger budget than any kind of in-studio, for-camera, comedy show would offer. And so perhaps they are also giving us a step down bridge to where we need to sort of recalibrate as it relates to TV, because the prestige, I think, has killed a lot of emerging writers and emerging stories, but also smaller stories that pack as much punch from a sort of humanity standpoint as the larger pieces. And I think you're onto something, Tracy, in how they've sort of begun to make that bridge here with this project.
We should also say, Rebecca, this is a two-hander in a lot of ways, but there's actually a pretty big cast. And in terms of who's credited now, there's quite a few people. And I think we can assume that 2 or 3 of these characters are going to emerge in a much bigger way and be kind of a permanent part of the narrative. I haven't read the novella, so I don't know which ones. But Rebecca, I know you've been doing a deep dive into some of the down ballot players here. And so say a little bit about what you're seeing.
I mean, I think that they've very intentionally cast charismatic people that you don't have to spend a lot of time with to feel invested in them and feel like you know them. I'm particularly talking about Baylor, who's probably had no more than 10 minutes of screen time total. But what Bertie Carvel is doing with that role is just sensational. I can't look away. I'm hanging on his every word. I have a deep crush on him. And I would also say that Lionel Baratheon's actor, Daniel Ings, is doing such a great job nailing the sort of chaotic bisexual energy that the Baratheons all seem to have that, we got glimpses of with Robert and Renly, and then Stannis was the stick in the mud. But Lionel really feels like that's a Baratheon. That's what a Baratheon is supposed to be doing, is reveling and getting in scraps, and it's just been so lovely to have the time and the space, even though again it's not like they're spending that much time on screen, but they're giving it the breathing room to feel like you really know these people. They're not just big dramatic hero figures. They feel very, very real. Even the Kingsguard knights, I feel like I have a deeper sense of who is a Kingsguard member from the 2-minute throwaway scene of a couple of the Kingsguard in the yard exchanging with Dunk than I did for 6 seasons of Game of Thrones. So I just think they're slowing it down to the show's benefit.
Okay, I think our panel all likes this and thinks maybe you might like it too. So it's A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's on HBO. I think you might want to check it out. Yes, the average length of the first 4 episodes of any of the first 4 episodes was 36 minutes. So it's a little less of a time commitment. All right, we're going to take a little break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Hamnet.
When I was younger, I should have known better, and I can't feel no remorse, and you don't feel nothing bad.
All right, we're still doing the nose with the Rebecca Castellani, co-founder of Quiet Corner Communications, director of marketing at Washington Montessori School, Taneisha Duggan, director of arts, culture, and entertainment for the city of Hartford, Tracy Wu Fastenberg, associate vice president for development at Connecticut Children's. Hamnet is the 5th feature film written and directed by Chloé Zhao. This was co-written by Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote the novel on which it is based. Chloé Zhao is probably best known prior to this for directing The Rider, which more people should see, and Nomadland, which a lot of people did see, which won big awards. This is nominated for a whole bunch of awards too, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for for Carolyn Payne lookalike Jessie Buckley, and a bunch of other things as well. It is a fictionalized version of the story of William Shakespeare's family. They're living at Stratford-on-Avon for most of it. It's about Will Shakespeare falling in love with the woman whom he marries and who bears his children. A little Freudian slip there. And we're going to just take it away from me and give it back to Rebecca, Taneisha, and Tracy Wu Fastenberg. Taneisha, maybe get us started here. We should say this movie is now available, I think, for kind of rental or purchase on streaming. I actually saw it at the multiplex in Berlin. First time I've been there in many, many years. But
my neighborhood.
Yeah, and it's called, what's it called? It has an odd name now. It's not called a multiplex.
Picture show.
Picture show, yeah. So I went to Picture Show. It's very nice in there.
It's giving all kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah, it's very nice in there. I didn't think the volume was quite high enough on Hamnet, which is a lot of the dialogue is kind of whispered and gasped. So I was kind of leaning forward a bit. But anyway, yeah, tell me what you're thinking about it.
Yeah, so, I am like in a constant state of verklempt in my life in this moment. So this movie totally satisfied that oeuvre. I have to say, Colin, even in watching it in more audio appropriate settings, it is a movie that requires you to lean in. That is sort of the I think the point. I'm eager to hear Tracy and Rebecca's feelings on this, because I think I am just so deep in how do you move as an artist in the world? How do you metabolize tragedy? There's something beautiful in the mundane and everyday, but also sometimes you're just working out the text, to be or not to be, as you're just trying to figure out how to move through life. So for me, it hits a lot of the points I look for in art to sort of tell me about myself in a moment. But I am also very specifically in a moment that I think reflects what Will is going through, and Agnes.
Yeah. And so, we should say this isn't a spoiler. You get told this, I think, in kind of a little placard before the movie even starts. This is the story of a little boy who dies quite young. And he's named Hamnet. We're also told that Hamnet and Hamlet are kind of interchangeable names at that time. And Tracy, one thing that Maggie O'Farrell has said is that she pretty quickly realized she was writing a novel about the mother more than anything else. This was the story of this particular woman, the way that she had imagined her, and I think that comes through. I mean, I think Jessie Buckley is a terrific actress, but that's where our eyes are. At least my eyes were most of the time. But how did that work for you?
I mean, I thought Jessie Buckley was fabulous. I mean, it was her story. It was her journey, her path, her everything. And I thought she was stunning in this. She's captivating. You could not take your eyes off of her. The way she delivered every line, every look was just, you felt it. I will be honest that the first half of it, or the first, I don't know, act, I guess you could say, did not captivate me, the storyline. It was beautiful and it was stunning. The scenery was beautiful. But I watched this in 2 sittings because I'm a working parent. And so finding, 2 solid hours is very difficult. And at first I'm like, this is not working for me the way that I thought it would. Like, I went into it thinking that was going to be a movie that I was instantly going to fall in love with. I love Hamlet. I've taken classes on it many years ago. But it didn't at first do that. The initial love story didn't. But as soon as we moved into that parental part of it, I was in. I was all in. It was really beautiful. And I think it captured the part of the caring for the children, the way she interacted with her children, and even the process of the loss too. You felt that. I felt that viscerally. And, we kind of discussed this beforehand, that you knew you were meant to cry. You knew that Chloé Zhao wanted you to cry and to feel those emotions. And I sat there going, nope, nope. And then I was just done for. And it got me every step of the way. I work at a children's hospital, right? There's a lot of joy there. There's a lot of, if you want to call them miracles, there's so much wonderful things that happen there. But the truth of the matter is that sometimes there's loss too. And, I have the honor of working with some families who have experienced that profound loss. And so in that, I could recognize some of what I've learned from those families in what was going on screen. I have kids that have had some medical journeys of their own. So sitting there watching a parent sit there going, I'm trying, you see her, she's trying to do everything she can for her children and feeling helpless. So you feel all of those emotions on the screen. I think she conveyed that so beautifully that you felt that really in the depth of your soul. And it worked for me, but really it was that latter part of it that worked best. And the way that they incorporated certain things that, if you went to high school and you read Hamlet, it was nicely integrated, but it really didn't pick up for me until that second 2/3.
Yeah, I mean, I have some personal thoughts about that myself, but I think I'll hold them for just a second and talk to Rebecca a little bit. One thing that I've done is, and I really would recommend maybe to all 3 of you just considering doing this, I've started the book now, and I'm just doing it as an audiobook, so I can just be listening when I'm driving and stuff like that. And it is interesting the choices that the 2 of them made in writing this, because the book begins differently. The book begins kind of in the middle of the family life. It begins on the day that Hamnet's sister gets sick. And it just because of an odd concatenation of things. There's no adult anywhere around. And so this little boy is running all over the village, running all over everywhere, trying to find somebody who can help his sister. And his mother, it turns out, is out in that verdant pagan environment that she likes so much, and he doesn't know that, and it's a mile away, and so you're sort of going through this kind of breathless journey of this little boy trying to do the right thing and just running into a lot of people who aren't particularly helpful, and then there's the flashback to the falling in love, and you know, in maybe the way that Tracy was saying, Rebecca, I wonder maybe they made the wrong choice there in just telling the story in such a linear way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't read the book. I plan to. I think that probably would have helped a little bit with the pacing. I didn't necessarily have the same difficulty paying attention and having it hold my attention. I thought from the jump, it really did sort of cast a spell. I mean, not just how beautiful it is, but Jessie Buckley, I mean, we've said it, her performance is just stunning, and she draws you in and grabs you, and you just doesn't let go. So I was very in it, which is a feat these days. It is very difficult for a movie to really capture my attention like that, where I'm not also thinking about work or checking my email or doing a million other things. So I think that's a very, very glowing endorsement of this film. I am surprised at my reaction to it, and I'm not sure if that was because I felt like it was queuing me up to cry, and I don't like being told what to do and when to do it. And that was just stubbornness, or I'm just so emotionally burnt out that I'm in this apathetic rut, because I am a crier. I am a very easy crier. And I did not cry until they started staging Hamlet. And that is because I am incapable of consuming Hamlet in any medium without crying. So it wasn't like I wasn't feeling the emotion or it was ineffective. It was just I couldn't get there. And my partner was crying very openly and very much feeling it. So, because part of me was like, is it because I'm not a parent? But he's not a parent either. And he was just absolutely weeping for 75% of the runtime. So I'm still trying to unpack why it wasn't more emotionally evocative for me. But that by no means ruined the film for me. I really, really loved this. I think it is one of the most beautiful films I've seen in a long time. I know it probably won't win Best Picture, but I think it would deserve it if it did. It really was stunning and absolutely captivating.
Yeah, you know, Taneisha, you were saying something earlier that I think I had a similar bond with, and that is I think in a way what this story is at least to a certain degree, the story of terrible tragedies that happen, and then how we start looking for ways to talk to ourselves about it in a way that will enable us to live with it. And I think you were sort of referencing the idea of the artist and the work of the artist, and they're both of the parents are artists in different ways. Agnes is an artist just in the way that she can. I mean, in the book, she's much more clearly in possession of some supernatural linkages, but she is just in the way that she relates to nature, to bees, to flowers, to herbs and poultices that she can make and all this kind of stuff. She's obviously an artist. Will Shakespeare is an artist in the way that we know. And there is something about that, I think, Taneisha, about what happens with artists when they try to begin making art that will help them tell the story to themselves in a semi-palatable but still incredibly injurious way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because I agree that both Agnes and Will are artists. I'm also like a prolific gardener. So I think in the practice of being in nature, in the practice of making those things, when she's talking to her daughter about like, name these herbs, right? Like, I'm like, that is an artistic practice. And I think you're absolutely right that they are both working through their lives. Even, the quote from her mother that her and her brother used to help them get through times. It's like this usage of text and sound and motion that helps us metabolize things. But I also yes, this is the mother story for sure. But I think because I have been oriented towards Shakespeare for so much of my life, I kept looking for those pieces. I loved to hear him working on Romeo and Juliet. I loved to hear, his wife recognize that he needed something more than the small town and was encouraging him to go despite the fact that she'd be left home, to herself and these children. So I'm with you that yes, this to me, this movie is doing the work of how does an artist, both for themselves, use the work to heal, but also how does it affect the broader audience. And I love to hear you say, Rebecca, that he's so successful in both handling his own grief, but turning it into a work that then affects you more than watching him and his wife go through the grief. Like that feels like the biggest triumph of any artist. And does feel like, okay, I understand why this work, endures, because I am a little like, wow, 16th century, like these kinds of people, whether it's Westeros or here, like these are the kinds of stories and times that, really capture our imagination. Why? And it's like, is it because there was space and time for the metabolizing of grief, not just for oneself and not immediately projected out into the world before you could actually process and write, but that there was time and space to do those things. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Colin.
Before we run out of time, I want people to be able to hear a little bit of this. You can hear Jessie Buckley as Agnes, the mother, Jacoby Jupe as Hamnet. And, well, I should just set this up by saying that Agnes, one of the things that she does, she has a peculiar way of gripping a person's hand, which she uses. She grabs the hand between the index finger and thumb in that area there, and she does it to kind of get a feeling for the person. But here she's doing it with her own son, Hamnet. B1, please.
Show me your hand.
What do you see?
I see you grown, very strong. And I see you in London working with your father.
In the theatre?
At the Playhouse.
What will I be doing?
What do you wish to do, Hamlet?
I shall be one of the players with a sword.
Sword?
Yes, and I shall clash it against the sword of the other player.
Show me.
There'll be a terrible fight, and everybody watching will be frightened out of their wits.
And who will win?
I shall, of course.
Of course you shall.
Tracy, you can almost hear a little bit of that movie bleeding into A Night of the Seven Kingdoms in that conversation, people fighting with swords and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Tracy, we really haven't said that much about the child actors in this, especially the little boy who plays Hamnet. I think there are some pretty remarkable performances. I mean, as McPants pointed out, both of our properties today that we are talking about involve small boys and actors playing small boys. Maybe, Tracy, some thoughts about that.
Yes, I was actually going to say we haven't even touched on young Jacoby there. I mean, he was fantastic. There is just such a quality about him that really touches you. Even the way there's one part where he just says mama twice. And I will just say, I lost it there. And it just, his facial expressions, his movement even, and I think he just captured what needed to be this character throughout on both sides of what he was playing. And it was beautiful. Without taking away from the mother's story, as was the focus, he enhanced it, but he also made it his own too. And he's got an adorable face. I just have to say that, it's just, it really is just kind of this bewitching little face too. And his facial expressions, his timing, and just the way he was exactly what was needed too. And I enjoyed him, and I hope that we see more of him in other films too, because I thought that he was very talented here. But he also he was what was needed for this role.
Yes, and actually, I think there are two members, Rebecca, of the Jupe family up there on screen, used in a very kind of interesting way. Actually, we should probably just break here, just so you guys lost some time to make some recommendations. But the movie's Hamnet, and if you can see it on a big screen at some point, unfortunately, it has left Cinestudio in Hartford. But if you can see it on a big screen, it is a very painterly movie, I think, and from the very first scene of that red dress embedded in this green landscape, it's worth seeing in a way that can, realize some of its visual qualities. Anyway, let's grab a quick break. We'll come back to this wonderful panel. We'll make some recommendations. And our guest technical producer today is the Jedi Master himself, Gene Amatruda. I'm sure Dylan Reyes, the maestro, is in the background somewhere in some distant site, making sure that we do certain things. This is produced by Jonathan McPants, who produces pretty much all of the Nose episodes. Just a little schedule note, assuming you care, but Monday is a company holiday for us, so we will do Ask or Tell Me Anything, our all-call show, on Tuesday of next week. All right, so we've got this wonderful panel here today. They're going to make some recommendations to you. Taneisha Duggan, as Director of Arts, Culture, and Entertainment for the City of Hartford, I bet you have some good recommendations to make.
I do. And I have to say, I've been doing this work with you all for such a long time. And for the first time, I feel like I'm holding recommendations that are like useful, that are selfless. It's fun to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is shout out Connecticut Public, who I see everywhere, supporting culture in all places, in unexpected places. Obviously, you are all tuning into one of our cultural gems, which is Mr. McEnroe in this show, but they're also supporters of Connecticut Museum of Culture and History's Drawn Here, which is a new exhibit that opened yesterday that tells the story of the North End through graphic novels. There are, I believe, don't catch me lying, 3 to 4 illustrators from the region that are sharing their work and telling stories either from the migration of many peoples to the north end of Hartford, to ecological backgrounds of Hartford. It's just beautifully done. So I recommend that. That's running through the year and is one of many offerings that the museum is offering for our semi-quincentennial. I urge you to go to their website to find out what other conversations and things they're doing. And Heartbeat Ensemble just opened Citizen James yesterday at Trinity Theater. They are establishing a new collaboration with Trinity where they are the theater in residence. So we have a resident, obviously Heartbeat has been a resident theater company for 25 years, but now they have a home at Trinity. It's a real polymathic's dream, as the professors from biology, from history, from language all came together with Deb Goff and the team at Austin Arts Center to set up this relationship. So those are my two things. Citizen James runs through the 21st of February at Austin Arts Center at Trinity, and Drawn Here at Connecticut Museum of Culture and History.
Very good recommendations indeed. Did you see the name Austin Arts Center? That's where they are now, right? Austin Arts Center? At Trinity?
Yes, they're at Austin Arts Center, Trinity College. And then, my third endorsement, always continue to watch this show and listen to this guy and read his things, as you all do.
It sounds like a lot of homework to me. Rebecca Castellani, what have you got for us today?
So I've got 2 books. There are 2 books that I've read most recently that kind of coincidentally tie into the content we've covered today, by no design other than fate. The first is The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. This came out last year. It is an Arthurian retelling set in the immediate aftermath of King Arthur's death. It sort of focuses on this misfit collection of like B and C net list Knights of the Round Table as they try and like preserve and unpack Arthur's legacy. It is long and chunky and poignant, but also very playful. It's kind of filled with some quirky anachronisms that make the reading very easy and fun. So if you're an Arthurian head like I am, definitely check out The Bright Sword. It was very pleasant surprise. My second book is heavier, and that is What We Can Know by Ian McEwan. McEwan has described it as like science fiction without the science, which is absolutely true. But I'd also add it's really mostly about like academic obsession and a sense of entitlement to knowing the past and knowing figures from the past with the same intimacy we know each other. And really kind of the nature of what makes a narrator and what is an unreliable narrator, what an epistolary novel is supposed to be. And like most McEwan novels, it is definitely a slow burn, but it's very rewarding and has a very revelatory finish. So if you're struggling with the beginning, I encourage you to stick with it and see it through because it definitely pays off in the end.
All right, great recommendations as well. And Tracy Wu Fastenberg, well, how about you? What do you have for us?
Mine are food centered because that is the way to my heart. But with Lunar New Year next week, I have to recommend one of my favorite cookbooks around this time, which is Mooncakes and Milk Bread by Christina Cho, which has a lot of wonderful recipes from Chinese American bakeries. So you have those egg tarts, mooncakes, which they're not my favorites, but really those things that you can make at home if you can't find them around here. But it's just a fun book with a lot of history around Chinese bakeries also. And also City Kebab in Hartford, which is a wonderful restaurant with both Turkish and Uzbek food. But they have one of my husband's favorite obsessions that I have to go light on is kunafe. But it's really delicious food. It's a nice dinner out. It's a great lunch place. Just go visit it, enjoy it, eat your heart out there.
Ooh. Also, appetizing recommendations. Thank you so much. One thing that I'm going to recommend, I probably have recommended it maybe 2 times already, but I have to recommend it in the context of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. And that is a movie that I pretty much can guarantee you that the creative team watched. It's called A Knight's Tale. It stars Heath Ledger quite wonderfully and a great supporting cast. It's weird because it's made by a director named Brian Helgeland, who has made a lot of movies and movies whose names you would recognize. But this is nothing like any of his other movies, and it's actually more whimsical even than A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, especially the way music is used in it. Contemporary music is used in it, very recognizable contemporary music. There's one David Bowie song that's used in a way that I won't even tell you about because the joy of just having it click on in the middle of a scene is a lot of fun. Same with the Thin Lizzy song. I'd also just quickly say that I've been kind of enjoying running into Game of Thrones actors in other situations. Emilia Clarke, who was the Khaleesi, is now in Ponies, which is actually kind of a funny 70s, thriller comedy about espionage in Moscow. And the name refers to persons of no interest. It's about the wives of 2 CIA operatives who are killed and then decide that they're going to become operatives. So it's really terrific. Last night, we started watching How to Get to Heaven from Belfast, a new series on Netflix. And darned if Caitlin Stark is sitting there in one of those scenes, and whatever the woman is who was the kind of the mother of the sand snakes, I bet you Rebecca knows the name of that character in Game of Thrones. She's in The Night Manager season 2. So they're all over the place right now because Game of Thrones never entirely goes away. We met so many interesting performers there. I just thought of another thing I wish I'd said during the discussion, but we'll do it some other time. Instead, I want to just thank this terrific panel for being here and you, the terrific audience, for listening, Mr. McNichol and Mr. Amatruda for helping out, and we're going to say goodbye. We'll see you next week.
Joking, talking about this and talking about that, and talk about everything as a matter of fact. Oh yeah, talk about Torrington, Vernon, Danbury, Waterbury, Alderberry, Woodbury, hitting on New Britain, Vernon, I already said that one, Avon, Farmington, yeah.